Well, first of all, thank you for spending a wonderful day at this conference, and at this hour of the day, you decided to come to another breakout session and not get an early jump on dinner. And so I'm thrilled that you've chosen to be here. By way of background, my name is Deb Knupp, and I make a living teaching people sales, marketing, and relationship building skills, primarily in the secular world and primarily with lawyers and law firms. So I make my living teaching lawyers how to be great networkers, which do you have any lawyers in the room? I will tell you it is a very interesting place to teach sales and marketing skills, and it is one that has humbled me greatly because so often we choose the things we do in our lives sometimes based on our style and our preferences. And for a lot of us, we didn't wake up in the morning or wake up in our lives saying, you know what, I was born with the sales or marketing gene. And when it comes to things like networking, many of us often feel like, I think a trip to the dentist might be more fun than going into a room where I don't know people. So wherever you are as your starting point, you don't have to be at all worried that being successful at networking is somehow going to require you to take on a new persona or become, real slick or, make that weird sound. It doesn't require any of that. In fact, when you do that, it actually repels people. So I'm going to just eradicate that from your networking toolkit. Moreover, though, today we're going to focus on three primary things. And my desire and prayer is that you leave here feeling far more equipped, more inspired, and more energized so that when it comes to building relationships for the kingdom, you can do that in a way that is genuine and authentic to yourself. Before we get started, though, I would love to open us in prayer, and then we're just going to dive right into the subject. Everything that I'm going to share with you, I've included on the handout, so if you want to take notes, terrific. And if after this session, if for any reason you want a blank copy or soft copy of this, I'm also happy to email that to you. All right? So let's pray. Heavenly Father, I just praise you and thank you for this moment in time, for these people who've made the choice to come to be in this room, Lord. We know there are no accidents in your divinity and wisdom, and I just pray, Lord, that they will leave feeling a sense of clarity and recognition on how biblical it is to be authentic in our ability to engage with others and to network in the space that we are growing and advancing your word in the kingdom in a way that attracts people and magnetizes them to your light and your love. I pray that we will have a wonderful time in conversation. We do all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right. So here we're going to get started. 3 things to get our mindsets around this conversation of networking skills. Number 1, we are going to talk a lot today about how to harness energy, and particularly how energy has an impact on your ability to model and reflect the gospel, particularly when you're working in community or in groups. So a lot of times we think of networking as a group-related activity, but I would say that if you know people, more than 1 or 2, that any time you have an opportunity to connect with folks beyond individual efforts, that is a networking opportunity when you're communicating or engaging in groups. So we're going to talk about energy today and how to elevate that energy in a way that really models the gospel and attracts people to our faith. Secondly, is we are going to talk about very specific ideas on how to build confidence and our credibility in communication. I think very often when we find ourselves in more classic group settings or networking settings, our propensity sometimes is to sit back and watch. Sometimes we go inward out of fear and lack of comfort. And so today I hope to give you more tools and more ideas on how you can bring confidence into any scenario and how every communication moment can be a blessing to others, whether you're in the faith or spiritual world or you're in your secular lives and environment. Lastly, if I don't do anything else well today, it is my hope and my dream that we will focus on how being really prepared is one of the best ways that we can honor God. And very often when we step into settings, meetings, committee gatherings, community gatherings, work gatherings, very often when people come to situations with the message of, I hope it all works out. Hope, by the way, is a great trait, and it's certainly something that would align us with God. But when it comes to building authentic relationships, hope is not a terrific strategy. And that when we prepare and we engage in such a way with a game plan, it really allows us to honor those with whom we are engaging, and it allows us to leave something behind in a way that can really move people. And again, whether it's the moving people because you're building out a ministry, whether it is you're trying to raise money, whether it is you're trying to engage within your team, whether it is you're interested in being promoted, all of these things happen greater when we are focused on others and we have a game plan to prepare that honors others as a reflection of our faith. So those are the three things that will ground us for our conversation today. And so let's start first with understanding, well, what is this thing about energy and elevating faith and how we can have kingdom impact? You know, in my work, I've noticed that there are 4 things that the best networkers I know do. And when I look at that within the context of faith, I believe people who love the Lord are superpowered with an energy that transcends all knowing and all personality preferences. I can tell you that to be an effective networker and to elevate your faith, so much of it starts with knowing how to approach it with authenticity and to do it in a manner which brings positivity to the situations you're in. Now, I'm not talking about a false positive or a false energy or a false happiness. What I'm talking about is when you are authentically rooted in your faith, the light within you shines out. Now, I recognize that in every setting where God places us, sometimes we think, it's our job to be the big floodlight, to be the light that draws everyone to want to know Jesus and wanted to come to their faith. But the reality is that when you approach relationship building and networking with authenticity, that light will shine from within you. It may be the light of a flashlight, but certainly enough to draw people to us in the spaces of the darkness that we often reflect in our lives and our daily interactions. Secondly, preparation to me is one of those areas, particularly when we're in a networking setting, where we often don't know or have a game plan. And when I think about preparation as a sign of honor, I just want to ask you, have you ever had a meeting with somebody and you're really clear that they've done their homework? Or have you ever been in a setting, maybe it's a meeting or a community or a committee setting, and people come to the table and you know that they did the pre-reading, or that you're aware that they've done a little research on the web, or they're aware of what the purpose of the conference and the meeting was all about. You can just tell when people have taken some time to be reflective and to be prayerful and to be thoughtful, and how they show up feels markedly different than when people just kind of whirl in and hope, or stand on the sidelines and don't feel ready to engage. Preparation is one of those areas that if we do that well and we do it in advance, it often leaves those that we're interacting with feeling very honored, very loved, and very respected. So the second way we can elevate our faith is to really think about preparation with a whole new lens. All right, number 3. So much of networking is often, in the secular world in particular, it's thought of as an action to get something. I am networking with you because I want to take something for my own. So I'm networking for new donors. I am networking for a new job. I am networking for some kind of reputation building or access. And while many of those things are the fruit that come from having a great network, I will tell you that when you network with an act of self-interest, it may not have the same richness or the same kingdom impact than networking as an act of service. I often tell my clients, whenever they step into the room, one of the great ways to begin, particularly if you're prepared, is to ask yourself, Lord, who would you have me be with? And how would you have me be with them? Again, as you step into a networking setting, if you ask yourself, Lord, who would you have me be with? Who are you going to bring into my midst as a result of this event or activity? And then, Lord, how would you have me be with them? And many times it's thinking of your life and your experience and your ministry and your work as an act of service. I often think that when I'm nervous or feeling jittery, instead of trying to look good or feel confident or look sharp, if I step in to say, how can my life be a gift to the people that I'm entrusted in this moment in time? And how can I be an act of service? And I will tell all of you, you have many gifts to offer everyone you're interacting with. And in some cases, it might be the access to another relationship or person. So all of you know people that making connections, introductions can be a great act of service. In some cases, it's the sharing of insights or information. One of the best ways you can be with people in a networking setting is to think about what are the insights or the information that I might be able to share that would serve the other person. Their passions, their wants, their desires. Is there the N of information? And for all of us, we have the N of invitations. Anytime we're connected with people in a networking setting, we almost always have something that we can invite someone to, whether that's inviting them to come to be with us at a service at our local church, whether it's inviting them to participate with us in a particular activity or an initiative, whether it's inviting them out for a cup of coffee or a bite to eat. Very often, an act of service is the N of invitations. So one of the things you can take away to elevate your faith and really have kingdom impact is to recognize that the acts of service can be remembered as the 3 N's. Introductions, information, and invitations. So each time you come to the networking gift, if you walk in with the satchel of gifts, it suddenly starts to be an element of joy because you think, who can I give these gifts to in the space of being in service? So thinking of networking as an act of service is a certain takeaway that allows us to elevate our faith. Finally, it's all about our energy. So often people will ask us, so who are you? What do you do? What's new? And let's be really honest. When people ask us particularly the question of what's up or what's new, whether a person's a Christian or not a Christian, I will tell you there's a human consistency. And very often when people say what's up or what's new, what do most people say? Nothing much. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen.
I say the sky.
The sky. How you say what's new is the sky. Okay, well, what's up is the sky. Well, that's even better, Susan. I like that. I will say that most of us, yeah?
You said the 3 N's was introduction.
Oh, yeah, so it's introductions, information, and invitations. You're sure welcome. So I find sometimes when people ask us what's up or what's new, most of us miss the window, either because we think, oh, this is just a common exchange of niceties, and then let's get to the real conversation or subject, or for some reason, when somebody asks us what's up or what's new, we default to, I'm so tired, or I'm swamped, or I'm crazy busy. And we know that when we say those things, it doesn't attract people to us. What does it do? It repels people. You have a question?
You went over them so quickly. I got the second one in your line of
The 3 N's?
Yeah.
I'm happy to give them again. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So as an act of service, you can have an introduction. So you can introduce 2 people to one another as an act of service to both of them. The second N is information. Things that you've been reading, great books, good articles, research or ideas that you may have. Passing along that information can be an act of service and change the trajectory of how a person will engage with us going forward. So when we say things like nothing much, same old, living the dream, or I'm crazy busy, what we're creating is this artificial barrier to relationship in a way that we don't even realize. So we're going to talk today about how you can alter your mechanism of messaging just as a way of getting your energy in that positive direction. All right, so 4 ways to be thinking about elevating our faith. And as we break this down then into the fundamentals, again, an opportunity to remember that as we think about approaching this with authenticity, we have 3 N's that serve as vehicles for relationship building. So when you're thinking, well, why would this person want to interact with me? Or what is it that we can do to be in relationship with one another? This is a terrific way for you to put yourself in their position and say, what's an N that I could offer that might be a gift? A second thing is, I think, a build on a principle that we all know and love, which is the golden rule. So in a space filled with believers, the golden rule is do unto others as you would have done unto you. It's a terrific rule for getting along. It's a terrific rule to extend your kindness. It's a terrific rule to extend your generosity. If you're generous to others, more likely they'll be generous to you. However, I think if we unpack it, that the golden rule is not just about treating others as we prefer to be treated, that it really is about treating others as they would like to be treated. It's an adjustment of the golden rule, which says I'm going to choose to suspend my preferences and desires in the space of understanding what you are interested, what your priorities are, what your desires are, what your goals and objectives are. And when I do that and I suspend my self-interest and I treat you as you would best enjoy being treated, it creates a common ground and an opportunity of trust in a way that will often inspire them to do the same. If I seek interest in you, then very often you will seek interest in me. And so it's the golden rule amplified in the sense that we do unto others in service to them, and in return they will model back to us an act of service in return very often. But it's more about them and less about our priorities and preferences. I can tell you where the platinum rule really shows up. Have you ever been in a setting where you're around somebody that's the opposite of your personality? So let's say, for the record, I am an off-the-chart extrovert. I'm admitting it now. This energy is coming, and I'm tamping it down, actually. But I will tell you that that extroversion is something that comes by me really naturally. I also know that if I'm in service to another person who does not share my extroversion, that my desire to treat them as I would want to be treated can actually create a barrier in the relationship. It doesn't create an attraction. So when I speak of the platinum rule and meeting others where they are, it's for me to get curious about what their best self, best situation would be, and adjust myself to be in service, as opposed to expecting everybody to mirror my energy level. So the platinum rule in action, it often comes up through the form of what we ask. One of the best ways to serve another person is to ask thoughtful questions about the things that matter most to the other party. So as an example, let's say you're in a ministry scenario and you're trying to raise funds. Can you imagine that if you meet someone and the first thing out of your mouth is to ask a person, so what charities do you support? And so what are the most important causes that you give to? And so what's your annual budget for philanthropic giving? Now, those are questions, to be sure. But at the center of those questions is your desire to raise funds. Again, coming out of the gate in a networking setting, you can see how that might set a person back. Imagine, though, if you started off by asking a person, tell me about yourself. Tell me how you're connected to this event. Tell me what you're hoping to learn and take away. Tell me about the things that bring you passion. Tell me about the things that you give your time, your talent, and your treasure to. And then as they share that insight or information, it can open the door to see, is what I'm doing a match or a fit? One of the best ways to engage others is to ask about the things that honor the other person's priorities and cares. And when you do that, you lay a foundation of trust. So part of asking effective questions is to ask those things which are in service to another person. Other-centeredness is where we see the golden rule amplified to platinum status. Now, thirdly, one of the networking fundamentals is to recognize that when you have an other-centered approach, it almost blesses you double in return, where that is listening to what a person really wants or needs and figuring out how to be in service before you seek to be served is also another example of the platinum rule in action. It's an opportunity to say, I'll suspend the thing that I'm looking for to first listen of how I can be in service to you. And then the last fundamental to highlight is this idea of securing definitive next steps as you go. Now, many of you are going to be at this conference. You're probably meeting a lot of great people. You may be exchanging cards or exchanging phone numbers or exchanging emails, and you might be tempted to leave this conference with the message of, we should really get together sometime. We should connect. We should grab lunch. We should have some follow-up. And both parties nod in great affirmation, take the card, leave the conference, and then that card lives somewhere on our desk, forming dust and guilt and shame. Because it's the person that we said we should get together, only to know that we didn't actually do the follow-up. Now, it's not because you're being a liar or inauthentic in the moment. You probably mean it while you're here. But I suspect that as you leave a conference like this, you're going to find yourself with a lot of competing things for your attention. And so the question is, how do I sustain my networking efforts so it's not a one and done? Or I don't have a sugar high moment with somebody and then hope that something awesome will happen. One of the ways to secure the ongoing building of your network is to never, ever leave an interaction with someone that would be important to stay connected to without having a definitive next step. Now, a definitive next step is different than a next step. Definitive next steps are time-boxed, they're mutual, they are set in the moment, and you have something on your to-do list. So if you're making a connection at a conference like this, and there are people that will be useful to the objectives and work that you've been called to do, and you want to be in service to them as well, the best thing you can do is to secure a very specific follow-up, a time frame from which that will happen, security that both of us agree that this is the right next thing to do, and make sure that you don't leave with something on your to-do list. Because sometimes you'll meet people and they'll say, oh, no worries, I'll be in touch, I'll email you. And ultimately, they too may get distracted, they mean it in the moment, but then the reliance on them taking the next step maybe misses out on the networking benefit. So one of the ways that you can engage is to secure definitive next steps as you go. It also helps you save yourself from yourself and allows you to be your word. I know that if I tell someone that I'm going to do something at a particular time and in a particular method, I've just increased the odds that I'll be able to honor them because I've given them my word. The DNS, the definitive next step, is a way to honor and to show people that you are their word. All right, so before I dive into some of the deeper dive on some of the workshop part of today, if we stop the workshop right now, if this was all we were going to cover, I would love to hear from you. What's on your heart? What has God placed already in your mind that maybe you didn't have before you came in? What have you learned that you think is worth amplification at this point before we dive into the next pieces?
I have a question.
Yes.
So you talked about the what's up or what's new question. Do you have an example?
Yeah. In fact, we're going to do a full exercise on that in just a second.
Cool.
100%. You bet. Any other reflections or observations so far? Or questions so far? Yes.
It's just, I thought of this while you're speaking. Something that I kind of do make mistakes is when I'm trying to arrange a schedule, I said, let me know when you're free. So I'm kind of putting a burden of pressure on them, not necessarily want to follow through, but I'm just kind of putting a burden on them to make sure they contact me instead of me contacting them.
Exactly. And we think that is an act of service because we want to show flexibility. And what you've articulated is exactly it. So when you are engaging in follow-up and you say, when is it good for you? Now the burden for them is to go find a when it's good for you. And this may not happen to you, but it happens to me. Then inevitably they come back with a time and a next step, and you're not available. So now the scheduling becomes a barrier. And I think the enemy uses that to keep us disconnected from people. If you've ever gotten in sort of that schedule ring where you just can't see them, and then all of a sudden you start to see the names of that person pop up in your email or on a text, and you get that feeling of dread because the scheduling has sort of become a major barrier. So I think it's always safe to say, here are some times that could work for me. It's a good way to lead with an act of service to say, here are 3 or 4 things that would work. Do any of those fit? And if they say no, well, then you can allow them to come back with alternatives to help secure that. Also, by securing in the moment, you don't get into the email loop. If you establish the next step in the moment, it makes that follow-through that much easier. Great. All right, so let's talk a little bit now about the object of your networking and how you might go about networking in a way that really advances your desires for the kingdom and God's desires for our work in his kingdom. So one is starting off with understanding relationship mapping. I think there's an unlimited number of people that you could love. I don't think God places any limits on the number of people that you can know, that you can love, that you can be known by, as evidenced by the number of probably Facebook friends or LinkedIn contacts that many of you have. Like there is a boundlessness of the number of people that we can know or meet and can be known. And I think our love can emanate to the masses. However, when it comes to networking, we are often limited by time and capacity, and particularly around relationships where the mutuality of those relationships really benefit both parties. So I would encourage you, as you're thinking about your networking skills, as you begin to look at whatever the goal or objective might be in growing and expanding your network, is how to think about individuals you're engaging. So using some sales language, the idea of a prospect, well, that's any person in the larger marketplace that has a problem that you could help solve. So when I think of prospects, I often think about who are the people in my larger world or my larger network that have a really specific need for which I have a really good fit solution. Anyone that I am not yet working with or not yet engaged with that has a problem or a need that is a good fit for what it is that I bring to the table, that would be a relationship to prioritize over general relationship building to the masses. Secondly, you have relationships with people who seem to be very well connected to people that you would like to connect to or meet. So let's say you have a particular mission or interest for a particular international endeavor. finding people who also share your passion for a particular location or geography and leveraging relationships from a connector's perspective can be a fantastic way to prioritize your relationships. So it's figuring out who in the larger network has a shared goal, a shared interest, a shared focus, and how do you prioritize those relationships for networking and nurturing in a way that might be different than the general masses. Other people that you will engage are relationships of people who would be your allies or alliance partners. Particularly in ministry work, these are individuals that often bring something unique to the ministries in which you're serving, where the 1 + 1 amplifies to a 3, right? So that your particular perspective and another person's perspective coming together amplify the good that you both can do by having relationships together. And again, those individuals who might be your alliance partners are often elevated. In a business sense, I do sales, marketing, and relationship building training and coaching. And a very good alliance partner for me are people who do public relations, web, and other forms of marketing communication. That's not work I do. But when we combine our efforts, we're able to serve our market far more effectively than we can individually. So whether it's in the ministry work or in your secular work, alliance partners are individuals that you can apportion out. Now, one person can be all three things. And as you evaluate your networks and as you think about relationships with whom you're encountering, you might think about, well, who has a problem that I can solve? Who is a person that might have a shared connection or interest? And who might be also an ally in advancing for the goal or objective that I share? And thinking about relationships through those three lenses. It's not in any way to say that individuals are throwaway or not important, but when it comes to the mission and the focus of your networking, apportioning out and prioritizing is something that's just naturally a smart thing to do because our time and our resources are limited. The ABC methodology is really to segment what are the A priorities, my B priorities, and my C priorities, so that when I look at where I'm spending my time, where I'm investing in my education, where I'm doing my networking, it's discerning how do I network in the places that may have the most mutual value and place a lower priority on things that maybe don't have that same benefit or that same edification. So targeting is about relationship mapping, and it's about recognizing how to prioritize and engage with a game plan for follow-up. Lots of places relationships show up. Your association affiliations, other affiliations through your faith, your church home, the ministries in which you're connected, the committees on which you serve, your larger philanthropic interest, the schools where your kids go to school, networks in your neighborhood. I can say that one of my best areas of ministry and networking happen right where my kids go to school. I spend more time with the parents of my children's friends than probably any other social life because I have 3 daughters, 14, 12, and 10. So I make the parents my mission field. I look at them with a high level of priority. So when I go to a school function, I'm paying attention. Where do I want to make sure that I sit? Who do I want to try to be near? How do I want to engage in good conversation? And by prioritizing that, it just allows me to do, I think, a more directed kingdom work than just randomly not having a plan. So targeting is something that all of you can take. And ultimately, if you really want to get connected in a group or an affiliation, it's engaging in leadership. Once you become known, it makes the networking effect much easier because others will often seek you out insofar as you might be seeking others out. Now, as we think about targeting, I would just encourage you all, as you're looking at the who will be most important, I've just given you a little place. As you think about people maybe you've met so far at the conference, are there individuals with whom you want to have some follow-up? Have you made quality connections, and where do you place the relationship priority for ongoing networking benefit? So this is a place to jot down those folks if they come to mind. And as you think about following up to a conference like this, where do your priorities lie? All right, so targeting is one of the aspects of being very effective at networking. Now we're going to get to the second piece, which Kayla asked about, right? It's Kayla? That is about messaging. There are 2 kinds of messages that we get, or 2 kinds of questions that we get asked a lot. And the question is, are we ready to answer them in a way that elevates the kingdom? So the first question is, what do you do? Now, a lot of times when people ask you what you do, many of us will default to, I am a, and then we fill in whatever the job title or the role title that we're in on behalf of the organization that we're representing, right? Like if I was at a legal marketing event, I would be a consultant and do in legal marketing, which is factually accurate, but it doesn't actually answer the question of what it is that I do. Similarly, if I'm in my capacity as a mom ministry leader, I could introduce myself as, I lead a mom's group. Well, I do lead a mom's group, and I am a leader in a mom's group, but that doesn't actually tell you what my mom's group is about or who it serves or what it is that it does. So one of the things that you can try on as a way of really impacting a better network strategy is to have a message ready that answers the what do you do question with something that sounds like I, verb, type of people or type of organization, the problem solved, or the opportunity realized. I help who achieve what? The vehicle by which I do that may be through my job, it may be through my committee role, it may be through my pastorship. It's not the vessel of the job or the work that gets us there, it's the outcome of the work that we can message. So right now, try this on for size, like a Mad Lib. Fill in the blank. So I would be the first word, then you write down a verb. So it could be I help, I lead, I facilitate, I advise, I grow, I teach, I advise. And then who are the people or the type of organizations that you work with? And what's the problem that you solve? So in this sense, I work with Christians who want to elevate their impact in faith through networking. I work with Christians who have an interest in elevating the impact of their faith through networking. So I've told you the community that I want to serve and the tool or the problem that I'd like to solve or the opportunity I'd like to realize. Now, you don't just have one answer to this question. You have multiple answers to this question. But it's far better to communicate as an act of service what it is that you do versus simply rely on the I am fill in the blank and assume that everyone knows. Now, to that end, the more specific question that Kayla asked was the what's new question. In my experience, one of the best acts of service you can have is to pre-think your responses to the simple question, the what's up or what's new. What's a professional headline that you can communicate, and what's something in your personal life? I have found if you think about a positive headline, a praiseworthy headline, that when somebody says what's up or what's new, if you have that message already prepared in the moment, your communication can be an act of service to people. Are you praising God for a great result, a healthy outcome of a test that you just had? Are you praising God that you've been able to launch a new ministry that's gotten this kind of receptivity? Are you excited about a recent promotion that you've gotten at work and how you're able to serve your customers or community differently? Are you promoting something that you're trying on for size? I'm learning how to be a better public speaker through my ministry with X or Y. Or I'm excited about launching a new thing in a new geography. When you have a positive headline message at the ready, it allows you to be responsive. So when people say what's up or what's new, you don't default to something that would create a repelling effect. You actually communicate something that could be praiseworthy or could be an invitation to someone who would want to be connected. So in my case, I would tell you that my positive headline message is that my 14-year-old daughter is in a Chicago public high school. She's a member of the church club, and she is actively recruiting her friends that don't know the Lord to join that group and community. And it's the highest praise that I can give to watch this 14-year-old. I get emotional when I think about it. Now, I don't know if any of you have a 14-year-old in your life. I don't know if any of you have got people that you know that attend public school, but by sharing that with you, I've just created a tentacle with anyone that now we have something to connect on. So now we've created a capacity to maybe have common ground where 35 minutes ago we didn't. But that's my praise. So why wouldn't I be ready to say that? And I can say that in all settings. Today at my workplace, I was at work before this, and people said, so, what's up, what's new, what are you going to be doing over the weekend? And I said, well, I'm going to start my weekend well, because I'm going to talk about Jesus and networking in the same sentence. My executive team, more than half of the people on my executive team are not believers. And for one of the most authentic opportunities that I've ever had, they were suddenly like, Well, tell me more about that. You speak at Christian conferences about Jesus and what we teach for a living? And I'm like, I know. Who knew? I can't wait till Monday. I did leave them, so they're kind of like, wait, we want more. But it shows you the power of how you can elevate your faith by having a readiness. So please never, ever, ever, ever miss this. When somebody asks you what's up or what's new, if nothing else, put the praise to Him. And sometimes we praise the Lord for what we don't have to deal with. I call sometimes the absence of crap. That's a good praise. Praise the Lord that I'm not dealing with a pain or a moment. All right. So 2 messages, 2 responses, and these are all things that we can prepare in advance. Because I tell you what, if you know somebody and you're engaging, it is a very high probability they're going to ask you some version of what's up, what's new, ¿qué tal, right? They're going to ask you what's happening. And what a great opportunity to kind of pre-think, what do I want to put out into the community or into the kingdom that would bless others? All right, so let's flip the page and we'll begin to wind down our time together. So I've been doing a lot of promotion around preparation as a sign of honor. And so I want to give you a rubric to make this come to life in a way that doesn't leave you guessing. So in my experience, there are 4 things that you need to prepare to truly elevate your faith for the kingdom work. 4 things, and really only 4 things. So what do you think the good news is? There's not 5 things, right? What do you think the bad news is? You have to do all 4. So if you really want to have your preparation be experienced by others as an act of service, there are 4 things to consider in your preparation that will really create a positive outcome. So number 1, have a clear objective before you go into any group or networking activity. Sometimes it's just, what is the purpose of the communication or event? What do you hope to achieve as an outcome? Sometimes being really specific about what it is that you hope to take away will really help you manage your time well. So as an example, at my children's school, there's a particular mom that I'm really interested in continuing to build community and confidence with. So very often my clear objective is to find Jen. That's it. I'm going to this event. I'm going to the band concert tonight with one specific objective in mind. I'm going to find Jen. And guess what? Typically, when I go to a school event and she's in attendance, guess who I see? Jen. Versus going in and finding a seat and kind of hoping I run into somebody. So that level of simplicity can really change the game when it comes to your networking activities. Now, sometimes our objectives are quite larger. Where there's a certain type of person we're looking for, a certain type of donor we're looking for, a certain type of parishioner that we're looking for. But nonetheless, if we're prepared and are clear about what objectives look like, I can tell you that I do go to a lot of events, and sometimes I say, Lord, once I meet 3 really super interesting people and get some next steps, I'm giving myself permission to go. And so sometimes the level of time and investment can be honored by being clear about an objective. All right, number 2, be key message ready. You know where you're going to be attending, so you ask yourself, what are the essential messages that need to be communicated, and what are those positive headline messages that we want to share? There's lots of things we could share, but when we take a moment and are grateful and are focusing on our gratitude and thinking about what do I need to get out, I'll tell you how God used this moment today. He reminded me that I need to tell more people in my work life that I am doing work in kingdom work, where work and faith are intersecting. I've often left that maybe to the side, or I say it out loud with trusted people. I'm like, okay, we're on the believer team, so it's safe. What a powerful opportunity today that I didn't even expect. But by having a message readiness, that creates that opportunity for the kingdom moment in ways that God will orchestrate the follow-up. Number 3, what questions do you want to ask? This is where we take that golden rule and we amplify it to platinum by saying, what do I want to ask or learn about from the event or the activity? What questions will help me have a closer relationship with the people that I'm interacting? So let me give you a few that you can use today, tonight, and through the balance of tomorrow. Ask people things like, how's the year shaping up for you? What are the things that you still need to accomplish between now and the end of the year? What are the more interesting things that you're working on right now? And lastly, what are you looking forward to in the new year? Asking people simple questions like, how's the year shaping up? What are your priorities between now and the end of the year? What are you working on that's interesting right now? And what are you looking forward to in the new year? How a person responds to any one of those 4 questions creates an opening and an avenue for common ground, and in some cases for spaces to be in an active service. Someone might tell you they're looking for a job. They might say that they're looking to find a new person to join a committee, that they're out actively looking for a new leadership. They might say, I'm looking for speaking opportunities. They may say, you know what, I'm looking, I want to meet more young high schoolers to get into my mentoring program. I'm interested in making connections with people who have this particular skill set in marketing communication. Like, if we just simply ask and hold space, it creates the opening for that connection and that active service. Number 4 is pre-plan what might be definitive next steps. Best case, likely case, and worst case. All of you right now have an inventory of ends at your disposal. Right now, all of you know interesting people throughout your network. And with a conference like this, you may be thinking, who's not here from my church? Who's not here from my office? Who's not here from my community? That I might be able to facilitate a follow-up introduction in a way that would be mutually in service to people. Or who is in a conference right now that I need to facilitate introductions to, even while I'm here in the body of this. You all have the N of information. What's the best book you've just read? What's the most inspiring article that you've just read that really was a game changer in your faith, or really created a real clarity or a real sense of who God is in your life, wherever God is coming and reaching you? Having the ability to share that information proactively can be a game changer. And then lastly, many of you could invite people to things. Inviting people to a follow-up phone call, a Skype, a coffee, inviting them to an upcoming event you're hosting, inviting them to your small group. Again, geography plays in this, but in this world, we all have a capacity to invite people to things. I always like to think, what's my next cool invitation that I have to extend? Last week I was at the Faith and Work Summit here in Chicago, so the end to this conference was the invitation that I was promoting while I was there and engaging with people. It was something that I could alert them to in a way that maybe they hadn't previously been exposed. So having the core 4 for preparation can happen on a macro level, like a conference, or it can happen on a micro level, like a one-on-one meeting or a phone call. But when you prepare in advance with objectives, messages, questions, and definitive next steps, you increase the odds that the follow-up and the engagement will happen more reliably. One final note. I was coaching a group of workplace leaders who are integrating work and faith, and I said, what would happen if you did a core 4 before your next status report? You're coming into a meeting, and your job is to give a status report on a project. And what if you turned that into an active service? What if you took an audience-centered approach to give a status report that wowed people in service to their wants and needs, that made them feel energized about the work on which you're working? There's no such thing as a throwaway in the kingdom, and networking can happen in lots of capacities, including group settings like the one we're in now. Which leads me to maybe the best part of the whole workshop. How do you work a room and not look like you're working a room? This is the magic question. For those of you who are also dating right now, you're welcome. How do you meet people and not look like you're trying to meet people? Or how do you not look like you're inauthentic or trying to be pushy? Well, here are a few things that you can do. Number 1, you can find out who's going. If there's an opportunity, maybe a conference like this, to get the full attendee list may be challenging, but whenever you're going to go to an event, if you can figure out who's going to be there or seek an attendance list beforehand, it might help you guide your objective. Number 2, the law of 1s and 3s. This is a networking rule that says it's easier to approach a person standing alone or a group of 3 or more. Anytime 2 people are talking and you try to join the conversation, that's when you're going to get the awkward interruption, because it might be an interruption to the 2 people who are communicating. So if you approach a person by themselves or get absorbed by a group of 3 or more, it removes the likelihood of that awkward pause. Even if the 2 people you know that are talking, you know them, resist the temptation to barge in, get within a sight line and let them invite you in so that they can finish the conversation and then ask you to join them. This goes a long way in reducing awkwardness at any event activity. All right, 3rd, when you go to an event, do the activity. Sometimes we think networking will happen best when I find my seat, and the reality is networking rarely happens at a conference when you're at your table. It's usually when you're up and around. So if you haven't taken advantage of the exhibits, looking around, having an opportunity, that's where a lot of natural conversation can occur because you're up and doing the activity versus finding your seat in the sanctuary and kind of hoping cool people sit next to you. To that end, one of the great ways, particularly when you're in a large group setting, when there's some fellowship aspect of it, I often encourage people to go find the longest line they can stand in. Now, I recognize it's probably a food or beverage line, which is a little counterintuitive. Why would I find a long line to stand in when I'm really hungry or very thirsty? Well, here's what I will tell you, particularly when you first arrive at an event. If you find a long line to stand in, what happens in long lines? People naturally start to talk, which then gives you that sense of comfort that you can build a more intimate level of interaction without feeling so awkward. I will also say that once a conversation's over, then we feel like we're a little bit lost in translation. Go find a long line to stand in. I promise you, you'll make new friends and connections. And if by some crazy chance you're around people that you don't think would be necessarily who you want to spend time with, the exits to that can be a lot easier without being offensive or somehow being too abrupt. All right, the 2-second rules. We are still in an era where we exchange business cards. Now, in some cultures, you start with the business card. And so it's appropriate that you would have your business cards ready to show that sign of honor. In other settings, particularly in North America, often the exchange of business cards happens at the end of an introduction. Now picture with me, whenever somebody asks you for a business card or your contact information, and you start doing this, or you're digging in your wallet and then all the receipts pop out, you find the card that's been in there and it's worn really soft, like a tissue. Or if you're like me, I've got a big pink bag, my head goes in, my head goes out, and I'm fishing around and rummaging around. Knowing that the exchange of contact information is likely how a networking interaction is going to end. So if you have a business card or you have an easy way to communicate your contact info, have that accessible within a couple of seconds so you can dispense with all the awkwardness and the weird giggling that often happens. Other things that you can do for great networking is come early. It's my preference. Or to stay late. Sometimes we go to a networking event and we try to show up and we go in the middle. And a lot of times it's really hard to make connections when everyone seems to already be. Relationships are in progress. So I would say if you have to err on the side of time, let's say it's a 2-hour event and you only have 30 minutes, 30 minutes in the middle will be the least productive time to build relationships. The first 30 minutes of the event or the last 30 minutes of it will probably create more opportunities for networking than trying to show up in the middle and hope. Last 2 things. The 300-yard refrain or the 300-meter refrain as it may be is never ever speak about anyone by name or by institution if that person or someone that knows them could be within 300 meters or yards of you, which is suffices to say we should never speak about people or things in a networking setting because we never ever know who is listening and moreover how what we may be saying taken out of context. I've noted a lot in my ministry work that often people feel compelled to remark about the pop culture idea of the day or the latest headline of the day, and we'll use group settings to socialize around things that may have a consequence to others. Particularly as people of faith, how we speak about others and what we say about others is just something that you have to pay attention to. And there's no such thing as, oh, I'm in a safe environment, I don't know anyone in the room. That doesn't mean they don't know the people that you know. And so I just encourage you, frankly, whether it's positive or negative, I think it's just be mindful because we don't know how those things can be taken out of context. Lastly is how do you manage the time? I think you have to apply disciplines which are culturally appropriate. But I recognize, particularly if you're at a networking event with an objective to meet specific people with specific opportunities or needs, it's useful to manage your time, but to do so in a way that is gracious. The 3-10-15 rule are minutes. If you spend about 3 minutes interacting with someone, you can exchange names, you can exchange the reason why you're at a particular event, and you can bless each other by wishing each other well, and then you allow parties to move forward. 10 minutes is usually a good rule of thumb if you're trying to figure out what's the in that I have to offer that could be in service to the other person. So I need to ask a few more questions to figure out, is there an introduction, information, or an invitation that I could extend that might be in service? But when you meet the perfect person that you intended to meet, when I go to the school event and I'm sitting with Jen, I need to be mindful that if I get into too much in-depth conversation beyond about 15 minutes, I might be keeping that other person from other objectives that they were trying to accomplish or other people that they long to see. So be respectful of time. And if you've made a good connection, set the definitive next step. Set up a time when you can have that more prepared conversation where both parties are ready and able to be at their best, as opposed to carving someone off from the herd and holding them hostage when what they really would like to do is be networking or circulating themselves. So limit the time. Now, when we get ready to stay connected, I'll say that sometimes we don't know how to exit conversations. So very gracious ways to exit conversations are to say to someone, I have enjoyed meeting you. If you say the word enjoy in the past tense, most people know it is over. I've enjoyed our time, or wishing someone well. Secondly is the exchange of cards. That will often create a natural ending to a conversation or exchange of contact information. And sometimes when you feel really stuck or really compelled, I will say this, please do not say to somebody, well, I need to go meet other people. Or I came here to make more friends. I'm going to let you go. Sometimes in our truth, we can be very abrupt and actually leave the other person feeling a little rejected. So I often say, if you need to excuse yourself to make a call, to check an email, but you actually have to go and make a call or check an email. You can't go jump into the refreshment area. They'll recognize that it might be a bit hurtful. But I think, again, having some exit strategies prepared in advance. Last but not least, this is an opportunity to figure out how do we stay connected. In sales methodologies, when you're selling something, do you know it takes 7 to 14 meaningful relationship touches before such time as a person buys something? 7 to 14 meaningful exchanges of value until somebody makes a purchasing decision. And I would say that in some respect, we're all in sales if we're trying to persuade or engage or recruit or attract or develop. We're all in that same capacity. So this is about stringing together those definitive next steps, leveraging the 3 N's, and looking at all the variety of things that God has given us in order to find ample and authentic ways to stay connected. So, as we wrap up our time today, I want to hear real quickly from each of you, what's one thing you can do? One thing that you're going to be able to take away and that you can implement by tonight. And so, Carl, because I remember your name and because you're at the front of the room, is there one thing that you're going to be able to take away?
Never say nothing much.
There you go. How about you?
Oh, one thing that I learned is to do open questions and at the same time serve people.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, he's just going in more prepared than I have.
Yeah, just not winging it, but actually coming in with a game plan. Great.
Law and 1, 2, 3, that's really helpful.
Good, great. Susan.
How do I answer what's your question?
Yeah, well, great, terrific. Takeaway. We're definitive. Good.
This is a question, actually.
Yeah. Oh, you want to ask? I'll talk to you about it after the class. Okay. I'll give you some extra coaching on that. Going in with the mindset of I'm here. Who can I serve? Great. Takeaway.
Securing definitive next step.
Right, and if you do that as you go, it just makes that follow-up that much easier. Good. Yeah, and that simple core 4, if you can internalize it, then it just becomes bing, 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 bing. Go ahead.
Also be able to pray.
Yeah, good. Great.
I liked the prayer that you said at the beginning, and that is, Lord, who would you have me be with, and how would you have me be?
With
My
you.
prayers not normally that way.
There you go.
It's less positive.
There you go. And so that's just a way to say that, well, I'm going to open myself up for the Lord's will. Great.
So just be prepared and ask thoughtful, meaningful questions.
The most thoughtful and meaningful questions. You'll be amazed at how people will bless your life by asking versus feeling like I have to tell.
It's just answering these, what do you do, what's new questions, just
Actually writing this down? Okay, great. Good.
I would agree with what Sarah said about just being more prepared when I go to just things like this,
Yeah, great. Terrific. Kayla?
I really like the responding to what's new, like what you said about
My 14-year-old?
destroying the barriers.
Oh, yeah, brings the barriers down. Just how you respond. Great, Ty.
It's really helpful for what are you doing, what's the usual response?
Having that response ready. How about you?
Yeah, the question.
The question? Yeah, good. Oh, yeah, good.
I just think being prepared just helps you be more respectful of a person's time.
Well, and it just honors them. If it's like we lavish them. with our preparation. Great.
Basically, I'm at someone today, and I want to make sure before I let them leave,
DNS, definitive next step. Excellent. And?
For me, the time is kind of ready, because we're not already thinking about what.
Well, and here's what you can do. I think Monday mornings are the best time to think about your messages of the week. And sometimes messages have a shelf life well longer than a week, but I would just say if you have those standard ready messages, you never know how you're going to bless somebody by having that readiness, because they're going to ask. And they're probably going to respond with not much, same old, or living the dream. And so when you can say, here's something positive, and it's quick, it can change the trajectory of that person's day, and in some cases, that person's life. So I praise God for all of you. Tay? Yeah?
Have you written a book or any book recommendation for quick stop?
I have not written a book, and if you will email me, I will send you some book recommendations. I don't have any specific ones that come to mind right now, but if we can exchange, that'll give me some time to think about it. Gospel-centered networking, no, but other-centered networking, like sales networking, I probably can make some recommendations. Good. Great. Awesome.
Thank you.
Praise God for you all, and Susan, thank you. Well, thank you.